Welcome back to this week's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm Simona, host of the show, and I am grateful for you being here and for you listening to today's conversation. This is going to be such an uplifting and such an inspiring conversation. We have Petra on the podcast, and we are talking all things getting to know yourself when you have maybe lost your way. We're talking about the vulnerability that comes with, not feeling in tune with who you are and the steps that you can actually take to create a life that's different than what you have been living and how to find that true alignment within yourself. We're also talking about how to find those little moments of gratitude and those little moments of joy, even when you're in a place where you feel stuck. And so actual tangible tools and tips and tricks that you can take and implement in your life every single day that are not complicated, that are not overly difficult, and that are not going to take so much time and so much energy and so much effort. I love how candid our conversation was. And I really, really enjoyed having her on the podcast because it was such a refreshing perspective to see that, really we can add so much unnecessary stress to our lives by feeling like we're not in the right place at the right time, or we're not doing the thing we think we're supposed to be doing, or we're not in the area of life that we feel like we should be. But the reality is, it's all about divine timing, right? The reality is that it doesn't matter how badly we want something. The universe will give us what we want and what we need in the exact moment that we need it, and then it's ready for us. So it's really important to remember this and to consider that if you're feeling stuck right now, yes, there is a reason, and also there is always a bigger purpose. So my conversation today with Petra is definitely going to help shift some of that mindset that you may have around that. And I will introduce you to her in just a moment, but I want to share with you a little bit about who she is. She is a full-time freelance social media manager and content creator. She started her business a couple of years ago during the pandemic because she was craving a significant change in her career, which I can absolutely relate to because I did the exact same thing. And she quit her full-time job to pursue this dream and really felt like this was the best decision for her, even though it was scary. It was exciting. And so now what she's doing is sharing all of the different things that she has learned in her life and in her decisions to help you make choices that align with you in a really significant way too. So without further ado, let's get into this conversation with Petra today, and let me know that you love this episode. Leave a review of the podcast on the whatever platform you are listening on right now. And if you want to take a screenshot and share it with both of us and tag us on Instagram and let us know that you're listening, I would be so grateful for that. Thank you so much for tuning in to this conversation. I want to get into all the good stuff. Let's do it. Petra, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and chat with you.
We're going to have such a great conversation today. I can't wait to dive in. But as my listeners know, and as you know, my very first question that I ask all my guests is, what does happiness mean to you?
I love this question because when you had asked me this, I feel like I had to actually think about it for a second. I'm like, what does happiness mean to me? I feel like that's not a question that I've ever been asked before. But if I had to just say what comes up to mind right away is, I feel like happiness for me means doing something you love, but also being your full self. I feel like those two things come up for me when thinking about what happiness is. And I think if you're living your life, being yourself, I think that means happiness. Like you're being yourself. So yeah, that's what I would say.
That's such a great answer. And it's funny too. I mean, I've been asking this question for so many years and I never get the same answer twice. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Isn't that kind of cool? Because
yeah, that is cool.
Right. And if you think, you can listen to experts and researchers and all kinds of people about what happiness actually is and what happiness actually means. But it's so personal and it's such an individual thing that it makes it hard to take that and to put it into words. And so, by saying your full self, I want to know a little bit about what does that mean for you being your full self, and how did you find the ability to tap back into that full self within yourself?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I feel like for me, it's been definitely a journey to get there. I would say I'm an anxious person. I struggle with anxiety. So I think that, I've had to work really hard at, being okay with being myself in a lot of scenarios and not holding back. And I think for me, learning to be myself is just using my voice and expressing how I feel. I think that's kind of what's kind of broken me out of the shell, to really step into being myself and showcasing who I really am. And I think that goes for everybody. I feel like, a lot of people hold back from being their full selves because they're afraid, of showing all sides to them. And I feel like I'm at a point in my life now. I'm 30 and I'm definitely feeling like the best that I've ever felt being at this point in my life. But I feel like it takes, and I'm sure you can agree too, like it's not until you get older that you start to realize what it means to really be yourself and like who you are, So
Exactly. That is so true. I love that you said this so much because it's such a good point. I feel like I also just turned 30 this, well, I want to say this last year, but it wasn't. It was last year. So we're just going to ride that wave for a little bit. But I also just turned 30 and, I mean, my 20s are amazing. I loved my 20s. I learned a lot. I got to do a lot of really cool things in my 20s. But I feel like, I never really got to be me. Like, I never got to be who I really wanted to be. And it was always like, a mix between like people pleasing and like trying to do things for others and like, always taking care of everyone but myself. And then it just kind of switches, and I think that's why, like, I don't know if you heard this when you were younger, but when I was younger, people used to say like, oh, 20s are great, but like your 30s are even better. And then your 40s are even better. And your 50s. And I'm like, okay, but don't you think it's because we just stop caring as much about what other people think and then we just kind of become our own, like who we are meant to be?
Oh, totally. I know. I completely agree with that. I remember hearing that in my 20s and thinking, oh my God, I'm so scared to turn 30. Like, I feel like my 20s are so much fun because I did have like the best time of my life in my 20s. I feel like I really lived it up that way in terms of like the fun aspect.
Yeah.
but I feel like, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm so afraid. But like now that I'm like here, I still feel really young, to be honest. I feel like I'm like 24 at heart.
Same.
But I feel like I do get now why they say that, because I feel like I said, it takes time to really like build confidence and, explore and figure out who you are as a person. And I feel like it takes you to get to when you're 30 to really like feel confident and understand who that person is, because like it does take that long, because you have to go through a lot of things in your life to figure out who you are, and it takes a lot of down moments, rock bottom moments to get there. And I feel like I definitely went through that in my 20s, which I'm sure you have to.
Oh my God, like honestly, I really have. And I've shared a lot about them on the podcast in different episodes, but I think when it comes to like the whole journey and what our journey is like looks like, it's a very interesting one when you take a step back and you take a look at how it all kind of comes together, if that even makes any sense. Like, you go through things in life and we never understand why we go through them. We don't understand why we meet specific people, why we have specific experiences. We don't understand why X, Y, and Z happens, but it's not until you get yourself out of that moment and then put yourself back into it where you actually realize what that purpose for that thing was,
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I like could talk about this all day, because this is like a huge part of the reason why I also started my TikTok, which I kind of explained prior, but just like how much beauty there is in being lost in your life. Like, I think a lot of people forget that in those down moments, it's like, instead of, dwelling on, what this isn't doing for you as a person, it's like really trying to ground yourself in like, what is this going to do for me? I might not know that right now, but I feel like anytime, anybody gets really lost in their life or feels, just like down and not themselves, like that's where you really start to actually figure out who you are. So I feel like there's just so much beauty in that. And I think like, there just needs to be more positivity around like the rock bottom moments, even though it's hard, because when you're in that moment, you think it's the end of the world. But yeah, so that's partly why I started my TikTok too.
Oh, I love that so much. You know what? It's smart though, because like if you think about like a platform like TikTok, and I know you're in the social media world. For our listeners right now, we're going to have all of Petra's links in the show notes, but you are in the social media world, is what you do for your business. And I think that, there's like a serious power in a medium like TikTok, because you're giving permission to people to feel a specific way about whatever it is that they're going through. And it doesn't have to be black or white, and it doesn't have to look one specific way. And, you know, the more we talk about things and bring things to life and bring them to light and to the surface to be transformed and to be healed, then we get to experience a whole new level of freedom, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
so
exactly.
magical. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely agree. And that's why like at first I only just joined TikTok in January of this past year. And I think that's what I realized about TikTok that I actually really like about the social media world in general is that it is a lot more not curated. It's
Mm.
very, expressive. There's a lot of accounts of people, sharing all kinds of things about their journey, like, the hard things and the positive things. But it's just like for me it feels more like real, like you're actually like looking into like the real aspects of people's lives more, whereas like Instagram it's a lot more curated. And I think that's why TikTok is probably dominating the social media world now, because I think the curated highlight reel is slowly going out of style or whatever you want to say.
I hope it does.
But me too. Honestly, I'm like a very big aesthetic person. Like part of my
Mm.
business is doing design and branding, and like I love the aesthetic part of Instagram. Like don't get me wrong, but I definitely think for like the world and people's mental health, I think that like TikTok definitely is more inclusive and kind of yeah, it just gives more of that insight into the reality of people's lives, like what people are actually
Mm.
going through in a lot bigger of a way. So yeah, so I love TikTok for that reason. But yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to create the page that I did, because I feel like for me, I've always been that kind of person to like, when I'm feeling down or anxious, I really thrive off of hearing other people's stories that may be going through the same thing, or just finding things that I can like relate to when I'm in those moments. And so
Mm.
my page is just sharing like quotes and reminders and really just yeah, just allowing people to not feel alone while they're going through that. And so far, like I think that's why my account is doing so well, because it's really landing with people in that way, and it's just creating the space for people to yeah not feel alone and to remember that like the down moments make us who we are too. So
Mm. I love that you said that. And you know, okay, so I was just recently at, by the time this airs, it will have been a little bit, but I was just at Podfest, which is like a podcast conference, and it was in Orlando. So I flew down to Orlando. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I got to speak at the conference. It was awesome.
cool.
One of the things though, thank you. One of the things though, someone had said to me when we were chatting and we were talking about, all kinds of different podcasts, whatever, whatever. And they were like, "Oh, do you have a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have a podcast." And then they were like, "Oh, cool, like, why did you start it?" And
Mm-hmm.
is something that you said there is something that has always been important in everything that I do, and also clearly what you do. And it was to help people feel less alone. Like that was the
Yeah.
sole goal of this podcast when I started it back in 2018, was for people to
Wow.
feel less alone. And the way that that manifests, and the way that people can come together and like feel part of something bigger, is
Hmm.
magic, right? Like,
So magic.
right? And like we never know, and I'm sure you get this on like TikTok as well. Like, you never know who's listening. You never really know who's watching.
Yeah.
Sure, you'll get like, however many views, but like you don't really know where those views are coming from and how you've impacted someone's life. But your ability to be transparent, like your ability to showing up, like to show up in your authentic truth and in who you are, gives so many other people the permission to do the
To
same.
do that. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And I think that's where exactly what I was saying. Like I felt I thrived and was able to start being that person through seeing
Mm.
other people doing that. And so I was like, I can see the power and the magic that this has with being a vulnerable person. I've always been like sensitive. I'm an empath for sure. And I feel like I always used to see it as like a weakness. Like I always used to feel like it was like a not a good quality of mine. And then as I grew up and in my 20s, I started to really try to like embrace that side of me more. And also just through the social media world, really just seeing that that is actually like so beautiful. And I feel like there's so much room for that to grow and expand more in the social media
Mm.
world, especially because I feel like people are so afraid of showing all of those sides, because I get it. Like it's obviously scary to put yourself out there and share vulnerably like how you feel or the things that you're going through, but I feel like it just makes so much of a difference in people's lives and in the world in general. So like I would absolutely love to see more people doing that, and that's why I'm kind of doing what I'm doing now, is just to really like encourage people to show up that way. And I hope that, TikTok continues to grow in the way that it allows people to do that too, because I think that's why, once again, I think that's why they're doing super well.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to like that mindset shift around showing up, so like, I mean, I think it's fair to say that not every single person like wants to show up on social media. Not every
Mm-hmm.
single person is into TikTok, and like that's cool, right? We all have our thing. But,
Yeah.
what would you say to someone who's like just having a really hard time like showing up in their life, just for themselves?
Mm, yeah, I would say like definitely finding something that you can do to have that is that creative outlet, or that is that outlet that allows you to feel like you're less alone. So that's why like I think, like you said, like there are people out there who are not social media people and don't see themselves doing that, and that's totally fine. Like the world is not meant for everyone to be doing that in that way, but I think the impact is still there for them to be able to use that platform and allow themselves to, invest in hearing about other people's stories or relating to something that they may be going through, and that helping them give them confidence to move forward. Like I think that's where the power is in social media right now, is like you can connect with people all over the world, and you can be behind your screen and be listening to someone's video, and they may be going through something very similar to you, and they may say something that might totally change your perspective. So I feel like, it's just really choosing how you want to use social media in that way, I guess, too, because I know for some people it's not always like a healthy thing. But yeah, I would say, like, to answer your question, is like just really finding those creative outlets. So if it's not on social media, it's like, for me, that it actually started for me with using Pinterest, for example. Like they have so many quotes and like positive reminders on there, and anytime I would feel like super down, or I was just in a really like not a great place, like I found so much healing through reading relatable quotes on Pinterest. So I would do that. And yeah, so I think it really depends on like the person, but those things have always really helped me. And I think, yeah,
I
it's
love
always a
that.
good way to do that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that because, I think that we underestimate. I've also always been someone who loves quotes. Like I'm drawn to other
Yeah,
people's words. I love to hear the
me
magic
too.
behind, someone's perspective. A good quote can make you feel all kinds of ways. You know what I mean? Like a really good quote, even if like, I mean, like I'm married, okay? And a quote about like heartbreak, I'm like, oh my God, like I
Yeah.
can feel that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like my heart is not broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But good,
exactly.
but good words can take you back to that place and that time in your life that, maybe you didn't realize were still open.
Yeah,
And like,
exactly.
I don't know if you think about this, but almost like can give you this like opportunity to heal that one like specific part, you know what I mean? Like something that you maybe didn't
Yes.
know was still a thing that's like, bubbling up inside you. And then you kind of come across this thing, and then you go down like a trip down memory lane, and then you realize like all of the things that are still kind of like coming up for you, you know?
Absolutely, exactly. And that's why, like, even with my TikTok, like, if you were to go to it, you'll see, like, I do have a lot of positive quotes, but I do have some that are really, like, vulnerable, deep, like, heartbreak kind of quotes.
Mm.
And it's interesting because I'm in a healthy, happy relationship myself. And I said to my boyfriend, I was like, if somebody were to come to my page, like, they actually might think that I just got broken up with. But it's not true. I'm just doing it because like we've all experienced that. Like you said, like I've been through heartbreak. So it doesn't, even though I'm not going through that right now, like it still really hits home for me when I see those words and those quotes and stuff, just like you said, because it doesn't go away. Like you still kind of are always kind of healing through stuff like that. Like it's
Yeah,
not like you just wake up one day and you're like, I'm better, I'm like over it. It can
exactly.
take years and years to like really move past something. And so I think regardless, you can feel related to that kind of stuff, no
I
matter at
love that.
what point you are in your life. So yeah, I think there's so much beauty in all of that. Like just
Oh,
sharing how you feel and vulnerably, like it really does make people's day, and it also just yet again helps people not feel alone. And I just like
mm-hmm.
love that so much.
Me too. I love that. And I love that you keep saying that too, because it's just such a good reminder. And don't you find too that like when you go into your healing journey and when you go into all of the different shadows, dark side, like all the things, right? Coming through that is great, like through the first thing. But do you ever find that it's like you come through the first thing, it's like, okay, you know what? I think I'm good. I'm good. And then 2.2 seconds later, it's like, oh, there's the next level. Or like 2 weeks later, it's like, oh yeah, there's the next thing. That's the next, thing I've got to tackle and go through. I don't know about you, but that's been a constant in my life.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I go through one thing and I'm like, oh great, like we're all healed. It's great. And then, go through something else and experience something else. I'm like, oh wait, hold on. We're just opening up the whole can
Mhm.
of worms here.
Yeah, and I think that's actually such a good point because I was actually thinking about this so much yesterday because I was reading Gabby Bernstein's new book called Happy,
Put it in the show
and
notes.
yeah, it just came out like a few weeks or months ago, and she was talking about how like a lot of people are always trying to achieve the impossible with happiness because a lot of people think like, okay, well, once I do this, I'm going to feel happy. I'll
Mm,
be good. Like my life will be better. Once I find a person, like a relationship that like fuels me, I'll be happy, But then once you're in that relationship, there are other things that come up that, you have to work through on a personal level. So like the personal work literally never stops. And I think it's just like we've been kind of talking about, it's like just really embracing that like the journey of working on yourself never stops. Like,
mm.
you're always going to have things that you need to work through and that, feels really hard or, there's just this level of, yeah, impossible that people are trying to achieve with happiness today. And so I think it's just, yeah, remembering that like it's never ending journey of working on yourself.
It's so true. Okay, what I love so much that you said about this, and this is something that I've come to learn over the years of doing interviews about happiness, that it really honestly, firstly, looks different for every single person. But secondly, there's no way to do it properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the times, like in society, like my husband used to say to me all the time, like, you're always trying to keep up with the Joneses. Like you're always trying to like get the next thing, next thing, next thing. But like,
Mm,
what about the part of just like sitting in where you're at and finding that deep gratitude for this exact moment that we're in? Why does it always
yes.
have to be more? Why
Something
can it
next.
never be
Yeah.
enough? You know?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's like what is so kind of disappointing, I want to say, for today is like, that's also the downside of social media is that it kind of like gives people this glimpse in other people's lives that everything is like so good all the time. So then they look at their own life and they're like, I don't have that. Like my life is really inconsistent. But like the inconsistency literally lies within everyone. It's just,
Yeah.
you just don't always see it online. So I try to remind myself that too anytime I feel like I'm in that downward spiral of like being upset at whatever I'm upset about. But yeah, I think I love this conversation. It's so interesting that we're talking today specifically because I've been thinking about this so much this past week, especially reading Gabby's book. Like it's all about this. So it's really cool.
I love that. I believe, and I'm sure you do too, because we've talked a little bit about like, our spiritual backgrounds, if you will. But I
Hmm.
believe in like divine timing for everything, like
Oh
divine timing
yeah.
in conversations, divine timing in things happening in business, in work, in relationships, in love, in health, and all that. Like, there's a huge power behind having the specific thing in the specific moment that is meant for you to have that specific thing in that specific moment.
Exactly. Oh yeah. I'm like very spiritual, so totally believe in the universe, divine timing, and I think that's why I also really encourage people to dive deeper with using spirituality to understand themselves because I think that once you kind of believe in that higher power, or you really actually do feel confident and trust that the universe has your back and that everything works out in divine timing, it becomes easier, not to
Mm.
say that it's not hard, but it becomes a bit easier to work through those hard moments because you really just lean into that. You're like really trusting, you just know, okay,
Mm.
this must be happening for a reason. I'm just going to trust that this is going to work out. So I feel like that's helped me a lot in working through my anxiety and moving past things a little bit sooner and not like dwelling on things.
It's true. It's so true. And, did you find that, when you were like in this, like, how did you build that trust and like,
Mm,
like that unwavering belief that it was going to be okay? Because I know for myself, I had such a hard time like letting go of the control that I thought that I had over my life, which was none, because let's be honest, we don't control anything. I mean,
yeah,
yes, like
exactly.
you can put an intention out and like, want to like, do X, Y, and Z, but we don't really have true control in life, which
That's
is a
true.
hard thing. And I also am someone with anxiety. I don't know what kind of anxiety you have, which I learned there's different kinds of anxiety. I have high functioning
Yeah.
anxiety. So my high
Mm.
functioning anxiety is like really intense in the way that it manifests like I work extra because my
Yeah, me
anxiety
too.
makes me work extra. Yeah?
Me too. I'm definitely high functioning. I like am overproductive, like almost like workaholic kind of side of
100%.
anxiety, because I like almost the anxiety fuels me to want to like keep doing it.
Yeah. And like for
Yeah.
everyone who's listening right now, like we are not glamorizing the fact this is not a fun thing
Yeah.
to live with or to go through every single day, like to live with that high functioning anxiety. It was very confusing to navigate. And then once I found out that that's what
Mhm.
I had, I was like, okay, everything else makes so much sense and it's like not an emergency. Like I always used to believe that like if I didn't answer right away, someone was mad at me. If I,
Mhm.
X, Y, and Z, someone was mad at me. If I didn't deliver this in time, someone was mad at me. Like it was just like a vicious cycle and it's not like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. That's literally me. I also struggle with a panic disorder, so I get panic attacks.
Oh.
Yes, so I've been dealing, I shouldn't say dealing. I have that since I was about 24, so I just periodically get panic attacks, but anyways, not on that topic. But from what you were saying, I feel like, yeah, I think I totally just feel that for me, I've learned to trust more, because I think once you kind of surrender to the universe, or like if you're in a situation, you just know you don't have control, but all you know is just how you respond and what you can do in that very moment. And then once you start to see that like things start to unfold or get better, then you just know that the next time that you go through something like that, you're like, oh, I did this before and it worked for me, so I'm going to just do that again. That's
Mm.
like what I feel like I've done in multiple situations in my life where I can think of that I really felt like I had no control and I was so scared and really just like nervous and putting my trust out there. But I feel like once you see that it does work out in the end, even if it takes a long time, like you just start to really, yeah, just trust that more as you go through your life. And I think that's why, back to when we were first talking about it, I think that's why your 30s are better, because in your 20s, you're still learning how to do that. Like you're still learning to trust and navigate your life and make decisions and, have learnings and mistakes and all those things. But once you get to the older part of your life, 30s, 40s, like you've been through all that. Like, you're like, okay, I've been through this before. I know what to do next time. So I hope that kind of answers your question. But
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I love that answer. I think it's beautiful. And I think what's so important too to remember here is like, we go through all of these different things in life. None of it is perfect. All of it is messy. Even when you think you have
hmm
it figured out, you probably don't. And
yeah,
that's
exactly.
okay, right? And like that's okay. We learn, we
Yeah.
grow, we navigate. And then the other part of that too is like when you think about it, you've really honestly made it through every single hard day that you have ever experienced. And I
Mm,
think that's the part where you can start to like build up that trust with yourself, is like knowing that you did make it through those really hard moments and you really did make it through those hard times. And even if you thought it was going to be the end, and if you thought it was going to break you, and if you thought it was going to be like I don't know, just like the last moments of your life, like what I mean, like you made it and you're
yeah.
here and you're listening
Yeah.
to this, you know what I mean? And there's power in that, right? There's so much power in knowing that all it takes is just one small step,
One
one
step.
foot in front of the
Exactly.
other.
Exactly. Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like I can think of so many moments, like I'm sure everyone can relate to this too, but like I feel like that happens a lot with breakups. Like I feel like when people go
Mm,
through a breakup, it feels like the end of the world. It's like literally feels impossible to think about how to move forward. But then you do, and then you meet somebody else, and and you feel happy again, and then let's say you go through it again, because like I've been through multiple breakups in my life, and I think that yeah, it's just every time that I've gone through that, it's gotten a little bit easier. Not to say that I don't still feel like awful, but I think
mm.
that my hope is still there. Like I'm like, okay, I've been through this before. I know I can get through this. It's not the end of the world. So
Exactly.
definitely agree with all of that.
Exactly. Petra, I have loved this conversation so much. I want to ask you my last question. I've asked all my guests when they come on the show. I've been asking it for 3 years. No one ever gives me the same answer. So I'm curious to see what you're going to say. Well, I mean, sometimes we've had like maybe twice on the show, we've had the same answer. But it's what can someone do to create a little more happiness in their day, every day, starting today?
Disconnect from the online space and
Mm,
go and be outside in nature. Like that for me, I feel like tops all types of healing.
I love
Be in
that.
nature, go outside, disconnect, be with your own mind, be in silence.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay, where can our listeners find you so they can learn more? Drop your handles and we'll put them in the show notes too.
Yes. So on Instagram, you can find me at Petra K Pearce. And then on TikTok, you can find me at Leave Me Lost.
Amazing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you. I loved having this conversation with you. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. Be sure to connect with us. Let us know you're listening. Tag us on your stories, tag us on social media, and just reach out to us if you have any questions about the episode. I am so excited to hear from you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.